You're hearing the number one least heard show in the universe.
Hey, check it out. 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 Hey, check it out.
Bad dog! Bad dog!
Hello. Hey. This is the Bad Dog Show. And tonight I have Daniel X from the Ministry X show on the Fringe Radio Network, FringeRadioNetwork.com. So, y'all just hang out and listen to us have a awesome conversation. I am Bentley Meadows of the Bad Dog Show. And
Yes.
You are Daniel X of the Ministry X Show?
That is correct, sir.
Or the Daniel X Pro?
Yeah.
Well, I see.
Both on the Fringe Radio Network.
Yes. All right, yeah, all right. I had a problem. I thought I had a problem. All of a sudden, Skype was blinking. I'm like, what in the world? Yeah, the FringeRadioNetwork.com. FringeRadioNetwork.com. God bless them. Oh, I got to do a show the other night with Johnny and then the Let's Get Jacked Up crew. That was kind of fun.
I didn't get a chance to listen to that live, but I'll check it out, yeah.
Well, I think it's 3 hours long, and we talked about a lot of stuff, not a lot about Stairways in the Woods.
Not a lot about Stairways in the Woods, or?
No. Yeah, not a whole lot, no.
Okay.
But I think it was what it was named.
That's what it was supposed to be about?
Right. But we
Okay.
went off the rails, I believe.
Yeah. It happens. Especially when you get all those people together.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Well, you've been on the Let's Get Jacked Up crew. You've been on there.
Yeah, I've been on the show, I think, at least once, maybe twice.
I can't recall, and I was like, oh my, I need to get on the ball here and listen to Ministry X. And I'm like, all right, cool. You know, Johnny, he always finds the best people. Well, I mean, not always, but most always.
Yeah, I had actually approached Johnny because I had started listening to Fringe Radio Network back in, I want to say, 2009, 2010, somewhere around there.
Oh, wow. That's old school, yeah.
And I listened to Iron Show. I listened to your show. I listened to Michael's show when he got started, I think 2016. Yeah, and I just loved downloading all those podcasts and just listening to them while I worked, and it was really foundational, I think. For me, you know, coming out of the occult and stuff and basically a new Christian for all intents and purposes, you know, it was really good. So then at some point, you know, me and Johnny had talked back and forth for a while, about a year or so, off and on. And I told him, you know, I wanted to start a podcast. I just wanted to be kind of part of this, you know, conversation, you know, with a lot of these guys I kind of, you know, owe a lot to as far as, you know, exposing me to like foundational things, spiritual warfare, all that. So I just started supporting the network monetarily because I wanted Fringe Radio Network to go on. And got to know Johnny and the Let's Get Jacked Up crew, and now you and Michael, and so it's really been awesome.
Yeah, it's a real eclectic group of people in this network.
Yeah, that's what's a strength, I think.
Yeah, that's what drew me to Johnny years ago when I heard him on the Dr. Future show. And, what was it? Future Quake. He was the Johnny the Longshoreman to me for a long time.
Right. This is before the Iron Show?
Yeah, I think it is before.
Okay.
This Dr. Future is one of the people that inspired that.
So Johnny was a guest on Dr. Future? That's where you heard him first?
Yeah, that's where I heard him first.
Okay.
I started following him and Rick shortly after that.
Okay.
It was like, wow, I love listening to those two. It was hilarious way back when.
Yeah, that goes back quite a way.
Yeah, I was amazed they could sit up in the same room together sometimes. And you can't hurt Johnny's feelings. So.
I know, you have to tiptoe. You have to be on, you're like walking on thin ice. No, I don't know.
But Johnny has always been, the open to everyone. He's the guy that is going to hit as I think I recall, it was the Mexican hooker and the crackhead. That was who he's trying to reach.
Right.
And I admired that, I was like, because I grew up with people and in the church, and those weren't the people they were trying to reach out to. That's right. Those people were not in my church, not ever, not at all. By 10, I'd already figured out the people in my church were. I'm like, why are we waiting around? We're waiting for somebody to walk up here to get baptized. Man, everybody in here is baptized, or they wouldn't be here. And it's the same people that's been here since I've been born. Mama, what we do? Waiting. Who's he waiting on?
Yeah, I love that about that approach, because I think you're able to reach more people just by being realistic. And I think Fringe Radio Network's there for a lot of people who have kind of feel outcast by the church system, or have, been hurt by somebody in the church, or disappointed by, some theology or something that they couldn't understand, or whatever. Just to be able to come here and listen to like these open-ended, discussions about theology and all the sci-fi stuff. I think, it appeals to ordinary people. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, forklift drivers and longshoremen and truss builders and
grandmas and grandpas.
Yeah.
And younger people. That's cool. Michael Basham, he's a character all on his own.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's
love that guy.
You're in the what I call the Michael Basham part of the Fringe. So you're doing like the preaching. Like me, I'm just kind of, I don't know, saying whatever's on my mind.
Yeah, you've got a unique perspective.
But I think, I'm not doing a whole lot of preaching kind of thing. Maybe a little bit, but I like hearing that kind of message. Like me, I never thought I was here to do the preaching kind of thing. Because I've always kind of, I guess, been more of a meat believing kind of guy. Like, I've been on this ship for a long time.
Right.
And, so when I was thinking today, I was like, well, I don't know what we'd talk about, you and me. And I was like, but if we did, I would love to be able to talk about, getting a message to someone who would be a new Christian or a potential new Christian. Because there's like me, it's just, I feel like I'm kind of a Jedi as a Christian compared to someone like that, because I've got the faith. I've got it. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
It's built on, rock. I'm good to go. But not most people aren't there, and it's going to be a while for most people to get to where I'm at.
Oh yeah, and that's what I like. Each podcast kind of has a different approach, sort of, at reaching out to potential, new believers. You've got your approach. I've got my approach, and I, try and sprinkle some gospel and Bible in there in between all the, aliens and everything else I talk about. But it's really about spiritual warfare. And then I like, Michael's perspective is like, he's on the front lines. He's just, it's spiritual warfare every day. My chickens are getting killed, and my truck broke down, and just like got bleach in my eye, and just like praise Jesus. And I just love that his show is like very encouraging to me as well. But I like your kind of laid back approach, like you've been there, done that, that's valuable too.
Yeah. But that said, we need more people like you that are out there and more inspired for that kind of thing. Like me, I'm like, any of that for new Christians, when they talk about, say, or potential Christians, I suppose, believers, if they're talking about it anyway, I'm like, all right, cool. I've been around the block here. And they're like, how about God? He kills everybody in the Old Testament. Blah, blah, blah. It's all this stuff from the Old Testament. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm more of a Jesus kind of guy. And I would just go with the, basically start with the words in red and just stick with the New Testament. That's really what your job is. Now, that other stuff, that's good information to have, but that's not where you need to start following that stuff, because there's a whole other different contract going on. You got to understand that. And that usually gets them a little better. I'm like, man, that's different.
Well, anybody who's decided I'm going to try and read the Bible and, start at Genesis and try and get all the way through to the end. Like what would happen to me is I'd always get caught up somewhere in numerology or Numbers or Deuteronomy, and
Leviticus.
Just
like, okay, I quit. I tap out.
If someone had come along and said, hey, start with John, Gospel of John or something, or check out Revelation or something, go from the end to the beginning, or something. But eventually, a lot of the stuff in the New Testament, it's like you said, it's the meat, like it's the foundational like stuff that's super important. But for a new Christian to digest that at first, that's a hefty task. I think you're asking a lot of them.
Yeah. And then I like to mention, I'm like, now this whole being a Christian thing, believing in Jesus is that's a tough thing. It's really tough. And I was like, as a matter of fact, the very first things he says in the Bible, when the first words in red is, suffer it to be so now.
Mm-hmm.
I like to take that out of context at that point, because that's just part of the verse. I can't recall. But it's, to, like, here it is. This is not, it's a good thing, but this is a lot of suffering that goes along with, this is a point where he says that it's not an easy ride to do it.
Yeah. In fact, it's to be expected that you're going to have suffering. You're going to have, turmoil in your life, for my sake, because of being associated with me, because of my name.
Yeah, I think it goes on to say, and to fulfill all righteousness is how that ends up. Kind of lost that there, but yeah, it's a tough road, and he was starting it right then.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, that was when he went and got baptized not long after that, and that was kind of cool too.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I've been sort of all over the place. I started out raised, sort of Catholic, although my dad was raised really strict Catholic. He went to like a boys' Catholic boarding school in Bermuda. Where the nuns would like slap your knuckles, with a yardstick, for goofing off. And so he was raised very strict Catholic. My mother was Presbyterian, and she basically had to convert to Catholicism to marry my dad. And so they kind of started with some Bible, stories and stuff when I was little, and then that just sort of tailed off, and I was kind of left to my own, So yeah, I got really involved in sort of New Age occult stuff, and then just even I studied with the Jehovah's Witnesses for a while, came out of that, and so eventually worked my way back to sort of my Catholic upbringing, and then jumped over to the fringe Christian sort of thing, and that's kind of where I am now. Where it's not so central, church attendance. And I was baptized by a Pentecostal preacher. I had a deliverance from a pastor when I lived in Montana. So it's been step by step, sort of coming back to the Lord, and there was a lot of different influences that kind of pointed me along the way to where I am now, 40 plus years later, doing a podcast.
Well, I'm glad you made it. Speaking of
yeah,
Jehovah Witness, the JW,
right?
They've been stopping by here on Saturdays occasionally, and now I've been talking with an old dude, and we've been getting along quite nicely. I haven't really, disagreed with him about anything. I usually, talk about the Fringe Radio Network, and I'm like, as a matter of fact, we talked about, blah, blah. And then he's like, oh, like today when he stopped by, I was like, brought up William Tinsdale because he was talking about, he thought about bringing me a Bible. And I was like, well, I got a thing over here on my computer, man. When I do my show, or I got 5 different Bibles up there to look at, and then I can, whatever one it is, what one is yours, I got it. But I was like, but I kind of prefer the William Tyndale versions when
they have their own version of the Bible where they've gone and modified some words here and there. I think it's called the New Living Translation or something, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
So, he said it, but I'm not all in on any of that by any means.
No.
But I have blowed his mind on a few things over the, last few months. So,
well, that's great that you can have a conversation with him. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I don't mind. I used to like to hang out with the Mormons or the LDS when they would come by.
That's good. I've got Mormons, like, because they always travel in pairs,
right.
So I've got them like arguing like amongst themselves, like after I brought up something before, and they're like, wait, we don't believe that. And the other guy's like, well, yeah, we do. And had them going back and forth at each other. So that was funny. I have a lot of interesting Jehovah's Witness related stories that I haven't really got into too much on my show yet, but I probably should do something like that in the future. Yeah, one time I think I was probably 9 or 10 years old. My parents were probably grocery shopping or something on the weekend, and this little old guy comes up to the door, and he looks kind of like Sammy Davis Jr. And he pulls out one of their books, and starts showing me pictures in the back, and it's like, this is like the, new heaven and the new earth, and isn't this look wonderful? And look at all the people of different races getting along perfectly, and the lions and the tigers, and they're all getting along happily. Doesn't that look nice? And I was like, well, yeah, that looks great. And so we just talked a little bit about it, and he offered the book, and I was grateful to get the book. And I was like, hold on a minute. And I went and got him $10, and I think he looked shocked, that I would donate to him, just out of faith. Like, hey, this guy seems cool. His book seems cool. And then later on, I would find out, more about it and everything. And actually go through and read that book and kind of, felt like it was talking down to me, So, yeah, at one point, some friends and myself got involved in it. Some of us to one more degree or another. And so I spent some time around those people, who were very nice, generally speaking. The problem I had was they encourage members to not associate with the world, the outside world. So they're very secluded in that environment. And so in other words, it's very difficult if you're a Jehovah's Witness and you marry someone who's not a Jehovah's Witness. That's like a big problem, and causes all kinds of family stuff. And then you're expected to, go door to door, do the door to door thing, 2 to 3 times a week. And I'm just like, I'm not down for this. Plus, it seems like it's talking down to me. Their books like I'm an infant or something.
Right.
And then my friend was like, yeah, I don't feel like doing it either, but I just don't think I could be that good. Like, these people are good people. I'm not like that. I can't be that good. So we both sort of rejected it for different reasons. Like, I didn't like the theology of it and stuff. It didn't make sense. But yeah, I should get into it.
Yeah, so you probably ought to break it down a little bit, because a lot of people don't know. I'm uninformed a whole lot about them. I take kind of a hard stance because when I was in 10th grade in high school, I went to high school in Moab, Utah.
Okay, wow.
And my mama told me before I went, she's like, now, BC, you promised me you won't become a Mormon while you're there. There's a lot of them there, and they're a cult. So you promised me you won't become a Mormon. And I was like, okay, Mama. You say they're a cult? Okay, I promise I won't join the Mormons while I'm there.
Is that what you said when they came knocking at your door? You're like, well, my mama said that y'all is a cult.
No, but I did say that in 10th grade to some other teenage Mormons when they were trying to, insist that I join them, kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
and by this time I had kind of a rougher reputation among some of them anyway, so it wasn't took lightly. When I told them that, oh, no, I'm sorry, guys. I mean, you all seem nice and everything. Don't get me wrong. But my mama, she says you're a cult. And I promised her I wouldn't join you all while I was here. And then the guy said something, and I was like, "Hey, you call my mama a liar?" And he was like, "Oh, no." Oh. I would have slapped him. Like, dude, you go. So that was the end of my Mormon thing in Moab, Utah, and they left me alone about it. I was still me, so I was still cool enough to hang around with, though. You know what I'm saying?
So you originally from Utah before you moved to? You're in Florida now, right?
Yeah, no, I was originally from West by God, Virginia. So, yeah, I was kind of terrifying to those people when I got out to Utah.
Yeah, a lot more straight laced, I think, out there.
Well, they were. Now there were Mormons, and then they had the Jack Mormons, and then they had kind of like some of the other locals that weren't, right? But it
Right.
was really, don't try to fool yourself. This is a Mormon town and a Mormon county and a Mormon area and in a Mormon state. And down the road, they even got polygamy, even though they don't allow polygamy. They got it's down there.
Right. So that's like the FLDS, right? The fundamentalists, the
Yeah,
breakaway
down there.
like
Yeah.
splinter group.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, well, how splinter are they? Because everybody knows where they are, first of
Mm-hmm.
all. And they all are allowed to stay out there. You're not allowed to go in. You're not welcome at those compounds. They're a little different. And you got to go out of your way to go to those places anyway.
Oh.
But yeah. And uh they had quite a few Jehovah Witnesses there. And so that was something else. I was around a little bit with a couple high school people there. But then, and that was like in the early 80s. Then I came back around 2002. I hadn't been there since. Well, no, I think I visited, but I moved back in 2002 and I ran into one of my old buddies and he was Jehovah, he said he was Jehovah Witness. I was like, really? Because he was a Navajo guy. And,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't act like a Jehovah Witness, but he's like, yeah, man, I'm born and raised Jehovah Witness, and that's the one I go to. And I was like, oh, man, I've always wondered since high school. And I was like, why don't y'all have windows on your church? And he's like, we got windows on our church. And I was like, no, dude, you don't, or I wouldn't be asking you this question because I've walked around it and around it and around it looking for just a little teeny tiny window so I wouldn't be thinking I was weird. He's like, huh, I never noticed that. And I didn't think he was lying to me at all, and he didn't seem like he was, to be honest with you.
You just
And
didn't realize.
yeah. Now I've looked at other ones and they looked like they had windows.
Okay.
But it wasn't like it was a common thing. I'd seen them without them, and most of the time they do have windows. Like when I saw
Well,
them around in my hometown.
they don't even call it a church; it's a kingdom hall, is what they call it. And then it's more like a community center, sort of. There's no real altar. I mean, they have like a podium, but yeah, it's like, and then they've got some regular tables and chairs, and yeah, nothing ceremonial about it.
Oh, well, that's kind of cool, I suppose. But it's still like, I also, and I'll say what I will about them or the Mormons, and I haven't talked about Catholics, but me, I like to say I'm just planting a seed, like talking with Mr. JW that stops by here on Saturdays.
Right.
I'm planting a seed of my Jesus kind of thing. But all this is really like, even it got you to where you are now. Because they're like, well, which one's right? I'm like, I don't really know. I got my own thing. I'm like more of a Jesus guy.
Yeah.
I was like, but I don't think it really matters. You start somewhere and you'll end up wherever. I'm like, I don't care what Bible you choose to start with. You're going to, it'll plant a seed and it'll take you somewhere that you need to be. If you're in the wrong place, you'll know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So like, not saying that all Jehovah's Witnesses are bad by any means, or, they got to have a certain amount of faith or whatever. I don't know. And,
right.
I'm like, that's not up to me. And, once I come to grips with that early on, like people are like, well, what are you going to try to do? Convert me? And I'm like, no, man, all I'm here is, you said you know Jesus. That's it. That's my job. I don't need to tell you about him if you know about him. You're good to go now. I'm just here to plant that one little seed. Bam. I dropped it. We can drop it. We don't even have to go on.
I remember one came to my door, and I think my daughter was about 3 years old at the time. And they're like, yeah, we're here to talk to you about Jesus. And about Jesus Christ. And my daughter walks up to the door and she's like, Jesus Christ. And I said, yeah, well, we're Christians here. And he's like, yeah, that's what it's all about. But their Jesus is kind of a diminished Jesus. Their Jesus is a created being, which is, I think, the primary difference between their viewpoint and where I stand on that. They're like, Jesus is specifically the Son of God, not God himself. Jesus wasn't, praying to himself. Jesus was praying to God the Father. They're very much like a separation there that I wasn't comfortable with.
Oh, I get that. I'm with you there. Most people will become uncomfortable with that. You will, feel that in your heart, hopefully, But then again, there they are out recruiting, doing whatever. And then, like me, I'm not really doing a whole lot of recruiting per se.
Right.
Except,
they do know their Bible very well, like much more than I did, initially when they approached me. So yeah, I believe, like, if God, for me, speaking from my own experience, I kind of made a covenant with God, like, early on. And it was basically just, I want to know what's true, whatever that is. If it's a disturbing truth, disturbing reality, if it's wonderful, I just want to know whatever's true, just show me. And I think God was like, okay. So I think, as God, your father, in a way, he's going to guide you. And, he had to show me a lot of the things that weren't correct first, before bringing me to, like, a fuller understanding of who Jesus is and the gospel and all that. So, yeah, I went through the JWs. I hung out with witches and warlocks and did the Catholic thing for a while. Been to all different kinds of churches and met a lot of different people. But really, I think what was so foundational, it was the podcasts, just listening to Christian podcasts. I think I got way more knowledge and wisdom and faith building, resources from listening to podcasts than I ever really got, sitting in church and, stand up, sit down. Okay. So I think other people have had a similar experience, like coming out of the Catholic Church, or, ex-Catholics or whatever. They're seekers. They want, like, spiritual fulfillment. And they find their way, hopefully, to places like Fringe Radio Network. And I'm trying to speak to those people. So I kind of, I reach out to all people, or try to, at least, and then, introduce them to a little something interesting about Jesus, or a little bit of the gospel. And I think if you've made that covenant with God, regardless of what your denomination is or whatever, like, hey, I just want to know you. I just want to know what's true. You're going to find your way to a podcast or a certain church or whatever that suits your needs at that time. So for me, it was started out and coming back to the Catholic Church, and then I kind of grew out of that and, kept seeking. And so I just think people have a similar journey. So I try and craft my message, my ministry, my podcast, in that direction, because that's my experience, and that's all I can really speak with, on any authority is my experience. And hoping that it, regardless of how many views or downloads or whatever we get, that it speaks to somebody out there, or a handful of people are going to really listen to that message and latch on to that.
Yeah, it just takes one, sometimes. I'm not speaking to the masses. Honestly, I'm speaking to a person when I do my show.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, that one person.
If I'm lucky, I'm speaking to a person, and I don't mind.
I kind of visualize things that way. Like I'm speaking to that one person, and then I'll just, throw a name out there or something, and like, oh my God, he's talking to me.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I see you there with your headphones on. Yeah, you.
But yeah, the whole Jesus thing. How was that with when the witches and warlocks? I was around some of that nonsense when I was in Oregon.
Oh, okay. So yeah, to get into that I have to take you back to probably 1998. And so at that time I had finally given in to getting on the internet for the first time. And it was back when AOL went unlimited, and like you got an AOL sign up for America Online CD like in your mailbox like once a week. And I was like, finally, okay, it's a free trial, pop it in. Oh, I'm just going to use the internet for research purposes. And soon I was, in these message boards and chat rooms and stuff, and meeting all these like freaky, like neo-pagan Wiccan people. And we kind of vibed, and at the time, I had a lot of occult interests and stuff, and we just became a community there. And then from time to time, they would have meetups in different parts of the country, and have little powwows and stuff. And yeah. Plus, I was doing a lot of drugs and stuff at that time too, so. A lot of it's kind of hazy, but I did get to know witches, people who practice ritual magic, and a lot of wannabe, shaman type weirdos, and hippie burnouts and stuff like that. So it was an interesting group of people. I didn't get out of that really until around the time my daughter was born, and that was 2003. That kind of marked a transition for me to kind of get my act together and be a responsible, like upright citizen, and get my act together. And a lot of that got left behind, and some failed relationships and stuff. So that was kind of that time period in my life. So I also have that sort of background too. And I feel like I'm speaking to some of those people too. Because I was there and I know what it's like, and kind of witnessed the rise and fall of that whole thing. But a lot of good people who just are, seeking some kind of spiritual, knowledge. They're just some kind of spiritual connection, like to a higher power. And so that can lead you down a lot of different roads. So yeah, I use that experience too to witness to people in that new age occult area community.
Very cool. See, I didn't have the, and this has upset some Christians when they're like, well, give us your testimony. And I'm like, my what? Like, what do you mean? And they're like, how you got to God? And I was like, oh, I was born. And then my mama took me to church when I was a baby, and I went to church every time. My mama went to church. So, what do you mean? That's how I got there. Usually in a 78 Lincoln, I think. But anyway.
Yeah, yours is a pretty straight line. Mine is really curvy.
So I'm like, I don't know. I've done some things. I've been off the line maybe for a little bit here and there through my life, but I never really was, that far away. I can tell you that much.
That's good. Yeah, and I always felt like I had a relationship with God. I always believed in God. That was very foundational through all this stuff. I always felt like God was sort of had his eye on me. And I think it goes back to like when I was 13 and was like, I just want to know what's true, or which religion is true. What's why am I here? So yeah, that's been my experience.
Yeah, it's a tough thing, getting there, to be honest with you. I think for a lot of people I'm running into today. But, is being a believer the new atheist? You think people are coming around? Because one of the things that I recall is that God wasn't coming back in Jesus until like he had his flock was at its peak, right? Like when his flock was the best it could be. Now, I don't know what that number could be, and they didn't say, but I assume that would mean that that's when there's more believers at that point than there's ever been. And that's speculation. So, do you see a rise in believers these days?
Yeah, I think so. I think if anything is sort of shrinking, it's the atheist, materialist worldview. I think because scientists are coming to these roadblocks where they can't explain what they're witnessing anymore without some sort of intelligent design there. And I think the deeper we look into space with the James Webb telescope or whatever, the more and more we see like we have like no idea how far this stretches. We can't even fathom the mind that created this universe, much less created life. So it's very hard. I think it's hard to be an atheist. I think because there's something inherent inside us that wants to be reunited with God. I think that's just something that's I guess some people can bury that, with a lot of bitterness or rebellion or whatever. But if anything, I think that's sort of shrinking. People are looking for spiritual answers, and I think unfortunately a lot of people are turning to like witchcraft and new age stuff and all this, self-help empowerment message. We need to grab those people and say, hey, that stuff's cool. And, some of it's, a piece of the puzzle, but they don't have like the gospel.
Yeah, this is really cooler. The being the whole believer in God and Jesus and and having power that people like that dream of.
Yeah.
Like when I was in Oregon, I had one witch when I walked in, she knows she lost her mind. She'd seen whatever light there was or around me and knew right away I was a believer in Jesus, I believe is how she talked about it, and didn't want me in the same room with her.
Wow. Yeah.
And, and that was like a circle of people that I knew that some of them dropped out of that circle that day because there was like 3 dudes were like, hey man, what was that all about? This is Jesus. And I was like, oh, I believe in God, Jesus. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, dude. They're like, well, how does she know that? And I was like, I don't know. But like, as soon as I walked through the door, she was like, wow.
I've heard various accounts like that, and I've never witnessed it with my own eyes, but
So yeah, those guys were just like, wow, okay. And that was crazy, and Oregon was full of those people, to be honest with you, to me, and a lot of atheists and a lot of racists.
was this what part of Oregon?
I was
Oregon,
in Ashland, Oregon.
is that like central?
That is like 14 miles off or up I-5? Yeah. I think that's what it was. 14 miles from north of California.
Oh, okay. Okay, so very like southern Oregon. Okay.
Yeah, that was and the hippies there were the hippies that bought their clothes at, like, I don't know, Lululemons. They didn't get their clothes at the thrift store. Hippies, and they were all like had master degrees, hippies and witches kind of people too.
Oh, wow.
Really
Okay.
weird. And
So,
I just
like,
happened to fall into that crowd, that circle, time, chance, circumstance, in Moab, Utah, and
okay.
I was doing radio at that time. Not that that had a whole lot to do with it, but that made me a touch cooler. You know what I'm saying? So
Cooler
yeah, that
than the
was
yuppie hippies.
yeah. And and that was also, we'll call this at I don't know, 2010, because I remember thinking like, wow, man, this world is changing, and this little smart, punky, hippie dude was like, calling me out as like, well, as a redneck, and I told him I'm not a redneck, and he's like, oh yeah, what are you? And I said, I'm a recovering redneck. Because I told him, I was like, because like 10 years ago I would have choked you. I was like, but now I don't do that. But yeah, that was when it started blowing my mind, the world, and then that part of the country too. That was fun. I was like, wow, this is a different kind of people than the East Coast people that I'm familiar with, because everybody believed in Jesus where I came from. There wasn't a doubt when I talked to somebody, they were all knew God, knew Jesus. Whether or not they went to church, whatever, they could have been a crackhead and they knew who God and Jesus is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There were atheists around me at my lifetime growing up. So there were a lot more of that West Coast for me. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So I was just, dropping seeds everywhere out there. So
That's good. That's what I try to do. And I mean, God's put me alongside some real stubborn people. Like, God, you give me like the toughest person on earth to witness to. People I work with, or people I bump into at the grocery store or whatever, wherever God places you, I think you got to find the people around you that you're supposed to encounter. And it requires me being more outgoing than I typically am. Like I said, that's something I have to kind of overcome. Just let the Holy Spirit sort of, point me a little bit in the right direction, and learning to trust that instead of my voice, which is always like, let's just get out of here. But yeah, dropping seeds, just giving people a little something to think about, and I think from that point forward, like the Holy Spirit's going to move if, that person, is of that disposition where, if God's like seeking after them, if Jesus is knocking at their door, it might just be the little extra something they needed to hear. And for me, it was like listening to Steve Quayle. So I would talk about, the Nephilim, the giants and stuff. And for a moment, like everything, all my seeking and everything Christian and non-Christian I had absorbed up until that point in my life kind of clicked in this one particular interview. And I was like, whoa, that makes sense. And that just set me on a journey of just being more hungry for knowledge, just more reading the Bible in a new light. And it could be something silly. I mean, for some people, like that road starts with, getting a visit from, a Mormon. For some people, it's just like some kind of, life tragedy or something, or some kind of, a visitation. So anytime you can open your mouth and just let some Bible or something come out, I think is good. Even if you end up, kind of looking silly sometimes.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't normally, and I'm not going to quote the Old Testament now as an example, but one of the better examples for me that I've gotten from the Old Testament, and it might have been in, I don't know, Deuteronomy, I can't recall, it's where it talks about, in your heart, it's there, that God is, and I've always held on to that growing up and getting through life. It's like, these people know, okay? They're just lying to you and themselves. They know God is the right thing. And they're just fighting this the whole way. And I'm like, that's cool. I was like, but y'all know better. And I've had my, look them right in the eye. I'm like, man, he put it in your heart. I was like, so that's all good anyway. So there.
Like what I was saying earlier, it's something that's inborn. To be reunited with God, to have that communion with God again. I think that's what happens. It's a spirit of rebellion, in my opinion, that comes over people, where it's just they refuse to accept that, and they're looking for any alternative that doesn't include Jesus, doesn't include God. And I think that's sort of the foundation of the whole rebellion, and that spirit. And, I've encountered people with that spirit, and I've had to wrestle with that spirit too, that rebellious spirit that's constantly like second guessing, like doubting, like, having my faith, wavering, because I'm a very sort of skeptical, sort of rational person, and so for me, I also had to have an experience. I had a visitation from what I perceived as an angel, the angel of the Lord. And so at that moment, you have like total conviction, or at least, I had total conviction at that point. And you realize you can't hide anything from God, and God sees like to the depths of your soul. And he knows all the doubts and questions and stuff that doesn't make sense that, have troubled me over all the years. But like, he just keeps his gaze on you. And that's what it felt like. At least it feels like you're under, a microscope or a spotlight. And then I realized all the things that, I was not willing to accept was just my like rebellion. It just revealed like my rebellious spirit that was constantly like questioning God, fighting with God, like arguing with God. And really turned me around and got me to understand like what faith is, like just going with what you know, just going with what I've placed inside you.
And there's one of the coolest things to see and the saddest things to see for me is a newborn Christian or a reborn. I love how their spirit is and how into being in the club that they are. But I also know that those are the ones that are like going to get that special attack by the devil. He really loves to go after them and break their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been able to convey like that to someone when they're like that. And I've been around them, and I watched them crash and burn. And it's crazy how that is with people.
Mm-hmm.
To like me, I don't have a problem telling Satan to be gone. I know when I'm hearing or seeing something crazy. So, but most people, I don't think, have that ability to realize that Satan is real and he does like mess with you.
Yeah, and especially new believers or people who are newly baptized come under special attack, I think, and that was true even for me because me and my daughter were baptized, and it wasn't but a couple months later that my wife died, had a heart attack. So I think that happens so that it's to instill doubt in a person. Like, hey, I just became a Christian. I just got baptized, and this is what happens. Like, forget this. Like, they're very vulnerable at that point in time. When you're a new Christian, very fragile. Especially people that aren't born into the church and people who are coming from outside the church.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I totally get that. I see that. I have my own way of handling with that kind of tragedy, and most people can't wrap their head around that. But I totally get people being mad at anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it'd be hard to turn to a person that's just gone through some kind of, tragedy like that and say, well, it's because you're a new Christian and Satan, he comes right after you. I mean, people don't really want to hear it.
No.
Right.
No, that people,
that's a toughie.
Right. One of the one is like, if there's a God, why does he allow so much pain and suffering, and death, that kind of thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it took me years of pondering on that one, and always I don't have a answer. I just have a question. I'm like, well, if there ain't a God, why is there any happy or beauty?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, how about that one, baby? I don't know
that's
why.
That's a good way to look at it, and that's not. Yeah, that's different than how I would approach it, but that's very good. Usually, I'm like, well, there is an answer,
Yeah, well, it's all part of the plan. But most people, like me, that's meat. I'm meat. I got that. Yeah. Somebody on the milk end of Christianity or on the outside, they can't see that way. That this is all, part of the plan. Is free will, will.
yeah, God doesn't create, the conditions that we're in. We create that. And it goes back to Adam and Eve, and it goes back to the curse. And yeah, that hits people pretty flat, I think, sometimes. Maybe that's the flaw in my approach.
Even the Pope, December 22nd, talked about eloquent demons walking in the Vatican.
Yeah, what was that about? I was thinking about covering that story on my podcast, but I hadn't done much research on it.
Well, there's not a whole lot. I found like a Fox 13 thing, and I had to be real specific when I finally tracked it down. It wasn't like it was a easy find, and that was just a few days after Christmas, because I think I heard that on the Canary Cry guys.
Okay.
Gons and Basil talked about that, and I was like, what? Yeah. So I knew that they weren't lying, but it took me a while to actually lay my eyeballs on an actual story about that in mainstream, and it was like a Fox News thing.
Okay.
But it was.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, what's he referring to? An elegant demon? What is that? What does he mean by that?
He went on and talking about, like, these people are walking the halls. These are like maybe some people were you looking at kind of thing.
Or some people in Hollywood, maybe elegant demons.
Like, well, he's talking about being right there in the Vatican, and yeah.
So not Nicole Kidman. Okay, hopefully.
No. But she would be elegant.
Yeah, and possibly demon infested as well.
And demons, I think, are a big problem with today, and it's something I've been wrapping my head around for the last few years. Even though I had a lot of Russel in me in the day, and there's that too. We are battling with demons, and they are real, and it's not like I can point them out. And the ones in the Bible that they talked about were at the end of town. It was like Jesus ran into them when he was getting to town. They lived like outside of the town in the tombs, and and I was like, he never did go into town and like take a demon out of the mayor. I'm like, there's something we're missing there, but they were doing it everywhere they went, though. They were casting demons out.
Yeah, I like that the demons like recognize Jesus when he's just getting into town. Like, he hasn't even said anything yet, or given any sermons or parables or anything, and they're just like already having a fit.
Like, oh man, you came here to get us, and he's like, well, not really, but now that you talk about it, now that you're here.
Well, I think maybe in ancient times, like if you had a demon, like you couldn't like function in normal society. Like you had to be outcast somewhere. But nowadays it's like you could disguise it better, or I don't know. But think of how many demon possessed people are in the mental hospitals and stuff. Think about that. It's kind of a different way of secluding people.
That just is amazing to me. Part of the Bible and the whole super or supra-natural, as Russel would said. Supra. Demons! Like, wow. I don't run into them. I think they stay away from me.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing. And I haven't had an experience, well, yes and no, but I've never had a demon-possessed person like interact with me, to my knowledge. If they did, I didn't know it. But I remember, I think it was L.A. Marzulli was talking about, being in front of a demon-possessed person and being so like terrified he couldn't remember his own name. Like it's a whole nother experience. It's on a different level than just some weirdo that you bump into that says crazy stuff.
I'd blow its mind. I
The
know I'm here to say
prophecy.
no to that kind of thing. Be like, you got to go.
Right.
You know, you have got to go get out of him right now. You know, but I haven't ran into that. But I have ran into people that I thought were mean, probably, maybe evil. I don't know.
They were what? Say that again. You broke up a little bit.
I was like, I have ran into people that were mean, at least, maybe evil. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I've only run into like a couple of those people in my whole life, and I've been all
Yeah.
over America, baby.
I think all out possession is still kind of a rare thing, but I think people can definitely be influenced by different spirits sort of hanging on. And I mean, we don't know. I mean, I can't confirm, whether there's, generational curses and that sort of thing. I tend to think that maybe that's a thing. Um, Things that follow people around for their lives and influence the decisions that they make without necessarily being in total control of their mind and body. Um, so yeah, it'd be probably quite a fright to encounter someone who was actually really demon possessed.
Yeah, I've not run into that.
And then what do you say? Like, I don't know.
Oh, I'm standing my ground. I'll know. I'll tell them to get out. Name of Jesus. You got to
Yeah.
go. And I mean now.
Yeah.
Because I put my faith in God at that point that, all right, here I am. We're
Yeah.
doing this. Here I am, God. There's been times in my life where, I'm like, all right, I'm doing the right thing. You're here. You're with me. All right, you got this. Here I go. And I've never, ever, ever had a problem. Never had to get violent at that point. But I've gone into dangerous situations, we'll say, with that in mind, thinking, okay, here we go, God.
Yeah, God has you there for a reason, I think, in that situation. You
Yeah, I
know.
felt, I was Daniel in the lion den, and I didn't
Hmm.
have a problem. I'm like, okay, you all right? I'm rolling with you, baby.
Yep. And well, it's all about faith and trusting God, and uh, yeah, just growing in your faith. That's awesome. And some people are probably like, I'm gonna go and take on the whole, principality of New York City. And, then they just get smacked down because, they're not, God hasn't called them to do that. You know,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
not prepared. They don't know what they're getting into.
If there's any calling for me, it is to say no when I need to.
Yeah.
And I have encouraged people to say no, and I think that's why I got a good belief in God. Also, and I can tell people no about things when it comes up, and whatever it is, good, bad, whatever. No, this stuff that's going on now. I'm like, no. You want my answer to it? No.
Yeah.
I'm like, gender, really? I'm like, I gotta go with no. I'm a God guy, Jesus guy. So got to be a man, going to be a man, woman, got to be a woman, and you got to do it with your kind. Okay, that's it.
Yep.
That's all I got. Anything other than that, you know better. Okay, first of all, or you're retarded, and even the retarded people I knew were smarter than that. I've been
Yeah.
around. I know those people that were called retarded when I was growing up knew the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's that spirit of rebellion again. Just
I'm
another
like,
manifestation of that.
whatever. But I think we could maybe wrap it up, maybe.
Yeah.
Or we could go on and on. I don't care. I ramble on.
I think this is a good spot. And we'll have to do maybe a follow-up, another episode or something.
Oh, yeah. I don't mind. I love doing just rambling with other people. It's easier.
Awesome. Yeah, I got to go check on my daughter. Sounds like she's maybe getting sick or something.
Oh, no.
I just got the notification.
Oh, yay. Sick kids. Gotta love that. That's fun stuff.
Yeah,
That's
but
good
it's been
parenting.
like really cool. It's been really cool being on your show.
It was great having you, Daniel X, and of the Ministry X on the FringeRadioNetwork.com. FringeRadioNetwork.com. You got an email or anything else you want to throw out there?
Yeah, if anybody wants to reach me, ministryxpodcast.com is the website, or you can email me at ministryx@protonmail.com.
Cool.
Questions, concerns, yeah. If you have a testimony you want to share or anything like that, I like talking to people, like talking to listeners.
Well, cool. And then you all can get a hold of me at baddogshow@yahoo.com. Yeah. Well, all right then. I guess that's about it.
So, yeah, let me know if you want me back on and we can talk more about, witnessing strategies or whatever the topic evolves into.
Okay, cool. I'm going to start. I've already planted a few seeds. I needed to get back to Johnny at this point, but doing some kind of Fringe Radio Network.com kind of round table.
Yeah.
It could be an oblong table at the on the Fringe Radio Network. It doesn't have to be round.
Nope.
But because we got that ability to go live, and I think there's a lot of goodness that could come out with a oblong table of some of the crew of the Fringe Radio Network team being together.
The Illuminati roundtable of the Illuminati oblong table of the Fringe Radio Network.
Yeah,
where all the big decisions are made. Yeah.
Well, you never know. But all right, Daniel, we'll holler at you later, and appreciate you showing up.
All right. Well, you have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.